Hello again and welcome to today's reflection. I don't know what your life has been like so far. For some people, their life is full of danger, drama and pain. Others seem to have it comparatively easy. Well, this is how the Apostle Paul describes his life in his second letter to the Corinthians. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, in danger from false believers. I have laboured and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. We don't know the details of many of those incidents that Paul writes about. But in today's passage from the Acts of the Apostles, we're going to hear of the lead up to one of the times Paul was shipwrecked. The situation is that Paul has been arrested and held on remand, as it were, by the Roman governor and is now being sent to Rome as Paul has appealed to Caesar. And Luke, our writer, is accompanying him. Acts chapter 27, verses 1 to 26. When it was decided that we would sail for Italy, Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. We boarded a ship from Adramyttium, about to sail for ports along the coast of the province of Asia, and we put out to sea. Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was with us. The next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends, so they might provide for his needs. From there we put out to sea again and passed to the lee of Cyprus, because the winds were against us. When we'd sailed across open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra and Lycia. There the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. We made slow headway for many days and had difficulty arriving off Cnidus. When the wind did not allow us to hold our course, we sailed to the lee of Crete, opposite Salmone. We moved along the coast with difficulty and came to a place called Fair Havens, near the town of Lasea. Much time had been lost, and sailing was already becoming dangerous, because by now it was after the Day of Atonement. So Paul warned them, "Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to ship and cargo, and to our lives also." But the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and of the owner of the ship. Since the harbour was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided that we should sail on, hoping to reach Phoenix and winter there. This was a harbour in Crete, facing both southwest and northwest. When a gentle south wind began to blow, they saw their opportunity, so they weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. Before very long, a wind of hurricane force, called the northeaster, swept down from the island. The ship was caught by the storm and could not head into the wind, so we gave way to it and were driven along. As we passed to the lee of a small island called Corda, we were hardly able to make the lifeboat secure, so the men hoisted it aboard. Then they passed ropes under the ship itself to hold it together. Because they were afraid they would run aground on the sandbars of Syrtis, they lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. we took such a violent battering from that storm that the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard. On the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days and the storm continued raging, we finally gave up all hope of being saved. After they had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, "Men, you should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss. But now I urge you, keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost, only the ship will be destroyed. Last night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me and said, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen just as he told me. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island.'" I love this bit of the book of Acts. Luke gives us so many details of how frustrating it must have been with the repeated delays caused by the weather. And then he describes how serious the storm was, and that the cargo and all the unnecessary ship's tackle had to be thrown overboard. And for many days they were driven along helplessly by the storm, even not being able to eat. This was clearly life-threateningly serious. But God preserves Paul. I'm reminded a bit of Ernest Shackleton's Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition, which began in 1914, in which his ship Endurance was crushed by pack ice. Remarkably, after a further year and a half or more, the crew eventually made it back to safety. But that's a great story, another story. Look it up if you have some time. But what is different about Paul's shipwreck is the confidence Paul has. Paul's confidence is not in his own ability to survive, but in God's sovereignty. And what's clear from this passage is that God has an important purpose for Paul. "You must stand trial before Caesar," an angel reassures Paul. There's something here that is obviously very special here for Paul. Not many of us have such clear messages from God via angels. Not many of us are rescued again and again from such dangerous situations. Clearly, Paul is very much part of God's plan for the spread of the gospel. And this for me is important because it gives authentication and authority to his letters, which are a key part of our New Testament scriptures. I sometimes hear people say, "Jesus I like, but I don't really like Paul." Okay, Paul was only human, and his writings were writing to address particular situations. But I can't read the book of Acts without coming to the conclusion that God clearly has a special purpose for Paul, and for me that gives his letters apostolic authority. And also, yes, Paul is someone special, and God has a special plan for him, but it's also true that if God is sovereign over Paul's life, God is sovereign over my life too. If God protected Paul until it was the right time for him to be taken, God will also do the same for you and me. The evidence of history seems to be that Paul was martyred for his faith eventually, and similarly that there is no guarantee that bad things won't happen to us. But what we can be confident of is that God will be with us. The writer to the Hebrews reminds his readers that God has said, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." And the writer then applies that promise to all believers. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you, God has said. So whatever our current storms, whether it be pandemic related, health related, perhaps family stress related, whatever our current fears, let's keep trusting God's sovereignty and his purpose for your life and my life. And what I love also about this passage today is the way God uses Paul's confidence to speak to the other 275 people on board that ship. He speaks of his faith in God, and he says, "Keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God." And as we go through desperate times, may God use us to bring hope to others. I pray that your life may shine a similar message. Keep up your courage, for I have faith in God. Amen.